Hello, hello, and welcome to this new live stream. It's been a while. I haven't done a live stream in a long time, and yeah, today is a great day. I'm happy to be here and to talk to you about these new instruments that we released. And today we're going to talk primarily about MiniFreak V. So what is it? MiniFreak V is it's a software instrument. It's a VST and standalone VST audio instrument that there's a strong link with MiniFreak. So we need to kind of talk about the two together for those who don't know. We released MiniFreak, which is this hardware unit here that you might be able to see. And so it's a synthesizer. It's a 6-voice polyphonic synthesizer with digital oscillators, an analog filter, digital effects, some modulations. It's a very, very powerful, very flexible instrument. And what we did is that we also created MiniFreak V, which is the software counterpart. So MiniFreak V is, as I said, a standalone software instrument. And it has the same sound as MiniFreak. And that is very important. It's the same functionalities. Everything is identical in terms of functionalities. Most of the code of the digital code is the same code that we took from MiniFreak and plugged into a software instrument in a way. And the filter is emulated. So the analog filter is emulated. So you know what? Let's just listen to a few patches, and then I figured we don't want to go too much into details of the functionalities. There's already we have some tutorials. There's a lot of information you can find, but maybe more focus on some sounds, listen to some sounds, create new sounds from scratch, and kind of get an idea of what this instrument can do. So yeah, I'll just start with the sound. So this is Fifth Element. It's a very unusual sound, lots of random modulation, so the sound evolves a lot. Each note is going to have a different sound. I don't know, we can listen to that, bass here from my friend Jean-Baptiste. Okay, so what I'm going to do, here's what's going to happen. I have MiniFreak here, and I have MiniFreak V. I'm going to just create multiple instances. I don't know if it's really about building a track or just creating some sounds. Sometimes I'm going to be using MiniFreak as just a MIDI controller, and sometimes I'm going to use the integration. So let's talk about that for now. I can link my MiniFreak to my MiniFreak V using this button right here. So when it's not active, the MIDI part, it just behaves as a generic MIDI controller. It still sends notes, but all the controls, all the knobs, don't do anything anymore. When I link the two together, now when I use the knobs on the hardware, I have the sound coming from the software that just reflects what I'm doing. So everything you're going to hear is coming from the software instance. I have cables connected, so at some point we can do some A/B comparison, but we're going to focus on the sound of the software. So okay, let's start. Let's create some patches. And I'll go through some of the features as we go. So I'll start with the new presets. Let's create a bass patch. So the first thing I want to show you is the different engines. The MicroFreak and MiniFreak V are based on this Freak oscillator, which is a multi-mode oscillator. So what it means is that you can choose among multiple types of synthesis in a way, and then you have a limited set of controls to edit this type of synthesis. Actually, you have 3 controls: wave, timbre, and shape, and then, well, pitch and volume. But really, the sound of the engine is wave, timbre, and shape. So it may feel a bit limited, but the great thing is that it ensures that everything you hear sounds, its sweet spots in most of the configurations of the knobs. So it's a great instrument to just try out different modes, see what happens, try different modes, and just tweak the knobs. And let's do that for a bit. So we're going to do a bass patch. Let's listen to some engines. So this one, basic waves, is basically some basic waveforms with a stop oscillator, some pulse width, super wave, super so kind of sounds. This is additive synthesis. And you have quite a long list of that. Carplus Strong is it's physical modeling. The Carplus Strong physical model. Some analog. Some of the modes are taken from the code of the mutable instrument plats, which we already had in MicroFreak. We have in MiniFreak and now MiniFreak V as well. Some of the other modes were developed by your friends at Noise Engineering, such as this one, the bass synthesis, an old synthesis method from the 70s. And although the name bass doesn't refer to bass sounds, it actually works really well for bass sounds. So maybe we can start with this one. Something like that. Okay, so I showed you the sound of one oscillator. One of the features of MiniFreak V is that we can have two of them. I can detune them. And then we can also filter the sound. So and we have multiple modes of filtering: low pass, band pass, and high pass. Okay, we're going to use the low pass because we're trying to make a bass sound. So, okay, I have my envelope here, volume envelope. I don't want any sustain. I want the sound to be kind of legato like this. So I will set the voicing to mono. We're doing a bass and legato. Okay. Let's start with this. Let's do something like a decaying sound where I can play legato and the sound decays over time. So I'm gonna just set my cycling envelope to legato as well, and we're gonna control this. So I click on this plus icon. Now I see the column where it's assigned. Here we're seeing the modulation matrix, and now I can just set an amount, and this parameter is going to be modulated by the cycling envelope. Okay, let's do the same with this one, maybe. Here. Something like that. Maybe something on the filter. Okay, so you know, just some basic modulation. I can also use, let's say, I can use some of the LFOs. So maybe add a little bit of movement on the filter. I don't want it to be synced. Free running. Maybe not too much. Okay. So I'm just designing a simple timbre like this. Now, let's do something. Let's use, for instance, the mod wheel. Let's use the mod wheel to take the patch into like a different direction. So we had this second oscillator here. Let's do something where when we increase the mod wheel, we add a second oscillator. So again, click on volume, use the wheel, set an amount. We can also open the filter with the mod wheel. And one of the great features of MiniFreak and MiniFreak V is that you can modulate the effects and all the parameters of the effect. So for instance, we can add some chorusing, but only with the mod wheel. So same thing, click on plus, use the wheel. And yeah, so very quickly, you can take a patch and bring it into something very different. And modulating effects is a very, very strong feature for this kind of, just taking the patch to something totally different. We can also maybe add, I don't know, distortion. Distortion, I said. And same thing, we want the sound to be clean when the mod wheel is at the bottom, and then increase it. So we're gonna take down the gain, take down the dry wet, assign the gain to the mod wheel, assign the dry wet. Maybe that's too much gain. Yeah, basically it's just a way to show you how efficiently we can do a simple patch, transform it into something very different. We also have two macro controls here, which I'm using on the hardware right now, but we can also have them here. And same thing, we can assign the macros to different parameters. Let's say, I don't know, what do we want to do? Maybe we can change this kind of movement on the filter. Maybe we can change it with a macro. So I will select a source and change the rate of my LFO like this, set an amount. And maybe we can also add maybe we can change the amplitude of that LFO. So the LFO to amplitude modulation, so that right now I have no LFO, and here I'm getting more. We can add some LFO to the pitch maybe. Okay, and increase filter. All right. I have a drum loop playing. Where is it? All right, let's record a sequence. So sorry. Count in 1 bar. There we go. So some movement on the mod wheel and some notes. Let's just quantize everything a little bit because I can't really play the keyboard. All right, let's go with that. So that was just an example of creating a simple bass sound using the modulators, assigning through the modulation matrix, and modulating the effects, some oscillator parameters, using the macros. What we're gonna do, let's take another track. So I just create a new MIDI track and add MiniFreak V to it. There we go. And this time let's not use synchronization with the hardware. So right now I'm only using the software, and this is just my generic MIDI controller. You could have a mini lab, you could have any MIDI controller, even just your computer keyboard, and it's enough. Let's do a new patch, and this time we're gonna try and redo a variation of one of the patches of that are part of the factory library, which is kind of a big super saw, and we're gonna try to to push the super saw as far as we can. So okay, let's so for super saw we have this super wave oscillator mode. Hold on. We have the super wave mode, so I'm going to use that. And what we're going to do, we're going to use both oscillators, both as super wave, so we stack even more sawtooth. So super wave. And we're going to change this one, tune it up 1 octave. Okay, now let's set the amount of detune of the super saw. Same thing on the second one. So already something pretty big. Now, what we can do, we can add some reverb. So I want to add some reverb, and I want to add some effects after the reverb. So I'm going to pick the reverb on the second engine. And then we're going to add multi-point compression. So multi-point compression pushes up the signal and makes everything just bigger. So let's use the multi-comp. Okay. I'm going to set the reverb to insert. Right now it's in send, so it's independent from other effects. If I set it to insert, it's going to go through that multi-band compressor. Yeah, a very, very, very big sound with the reverb. Now we're gonna use modulations to have reverb only when the sound is not playing. So it's clean sound, and then when it dies, reverb. So no reverb, reverb. So I'm going to use the envelope and just reduce the level of the reverb when the sound is playing. So I, again, click on plus, use my envelope, and set a negative amount, so it takes down the level. Okay. And we're gonna do the same with this multiple compressor and just push it up when the notes are playing and take it down when the notes are not playing. So I'm gonna click the amount, push the envelope. Here's the difference without. And when I take it up, okay. And one final thing that we can do to make the sound even bigger is to use the unison. Right now, I can play polyphonically, and if I use unison, so right now I have all 6 voices playing at the same time in unison, each one with 2 super wave oscillators. So in total, it's 14 sawtooth times 6, so 84 sawtooth, and we can detune the unison. Okay, and maybe add a little bit of chorus to add a little bit of stereo depth. Too much reverb. Okay, so yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, taking a concept like super saw patches and see how you can push it to the limit. With multiple oscillators, with with effects, you can really get very aggressive tones. Okay. Well, let's move on. Let's make another track. Again, add my MiniFreak V to a new track. So yeah, let's do something. Let's just go through a bunch of patches. I've made a selection of patches just that I wanted to showcase. I've shown some of them at the beginning. Let's hear some other ones. So this one, for instance. This one uses a little bit of saturation, so you can hear when there are multiple notes playing together. You can hear the distortion. Now let's see what's assigned to the different modulators. So mod wheel. Detunes everything. And the macros. Okay. Comets, this one is nice. This one is also quite typical of MiniFreak, of the timbres you can get with MiniFreak V. The previous one really was focusing on distortion. This one is it shows how the modulators, how the modulators can give different timbres for each voices. And same thing. Let's. So I was right now. I was tweaking the mod wheel, which removes this movement in the patch. What we're hearing is a different LFO on each of the voices that controls the volume, but it's different for each voice. So every note is going to have a different wobbly effect. It's something, if you try the demo of MiniFreak V, or maybe you purchase it already, or maybe you have a MiniFreak and you have MiniFreak V for free, but I strongly recommend to listen to the factory library. It's really beautiful, in my opinion, but more importantly, listen to how the macros were mapped, because the sound designers made an amazing job to not just create one static patch, but actually give you multiple directions to explore the patch through the mod wheel, through the macro, aftertouch, velocity most of the time as well, and it's I wouldn't say it's a multi-dimensional preset, but at least it makes it so easy to get your own sound. I don't know if you just heard that, but it can be a simple string sound. It can also be this kind of almost the sound effect kind of patches, and all of that is just one factory patch that we're tweaking. Let's move on. Let's listen to this one, Cygnus. Again, I think it's also some kind of evolving pad. So I guess it's an opportunity to say it. When we designed MiniFreak and MiniFreak V, we wanted something that had a character. We didn't want to make a generic synth. And the character that we were aiming for was something in, like, like the digital aesthetic. You know, how can we make digital a beautiful word? You know, and for instance, what we like with analog is how analog has flows. You know, how these vintage instruments, they are detuned. Each voice is kind of independent from the other, and so the sound becomes bigger because not everything is identical. So these are some of the particularities of analog. How could we put forward the particularities of digital? You know, how can aliasing be aesthetic? How can some, very harsh FM patches become something pleasant? And I really like how this instrument, how the sound has this kind of erratic, glitchy overall vibe to it. It can sound very clean. Maybe we can listen to more of the, cleaner, more simple patches, but this how this kind of like big crushy, distorted FM sound, very different on each voice. And same thing, we can, let's take out the effects, just. So, it's not purely the effects. In this case, I think the FM engine is doing a lot of this FM engine. It takes the first oscillator and uses it as a FA modulator for the second oscillators. It's again an interesting way to create more of these harsh digital timbres. And you combine that with the first oscillator, and of course, because everything is a bit harsher, adding some effects kind of blurs everything and turns it into this more soundscapey sound. Let's move on. This one, also by Simon. Dispatch, distant blink, simple keys, simple kind of lo-fi keys, but again, there's this kind of twist where you hear how the notes die. In the end, you get like the oscillator kind of becomes randomly chooses some octaves. Maybe this one, I don't know, it's a lot of patches, maybe I'll keep some for later, but this is more of the, how it can sound kind of analog. So, as I was telling you, right now we're listening to MiniFreak. We're listening to the software only. Maybe it's an opportunity to listen to how it compares to the hardware. So I have a muted hardware track. If I solo it, we're gonna hear just. This is just the hardware, and this is just the software. Software, hardware, soft, and you know we can do that on a hardware, software. You know, Archer has been emulating instruments for 20 years now, so getting to this level of detail in everything, of course, the digital part, it's fairly easy to get it to sound the same because we have the code. And you know, emulating a filter is something that we've been doing many times. So you can expect that the sound are going to be the same. If you have MiniFreak V is an amazing tool to add an extra dimension to your hardware experience because hardware is fun, because tweaking knobs is fun. You know, it's something the tactile feel is something that's amazing. But sometimes you need the convenience of the computer, you know, just being able to have multiple tracks, being able to take your laptop and be in wherever in the train or something and just keep on working on a project and come back to your house and continue to do sound design with your hardware, you know, and you don't have to think about what you're using. You know, I don't know if you've seen me, but sometimes I'm going to use a knob, sometimes I'm going to turn the knob with my mouse. It's kind of all the same experience, you know, and because the integration is like 100% flawless, it's, I don't know, sometimes I don't even realize if I'm using the hardware or the software. I'm just, you know, using MiniFreak in its two different states. And this is great. Like, this is really powerful. I want people to understand that, you know, as a software on its own, it's an amazing software instrument. The hardware on its own is amazing, and the extra power that you get from having both and, you know, using both of them when it makes sense to you is something quite unique. Yeah, let's continue for a bit. I wanted to maybe show a bit of some other features we haven't talked about that I really like. Let's do a new patch and let's talk about the shapers. So the shapers is a functionality for the LFOs where you can design your own LFO shapes. And let's just hear in action. So let's do a simple patch. Let's modulate cutoff with LFO1. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, let's use maybe. Okay. So I'm gonna use the shaper waveform. So I just turn it to shaper and go to the shaper page. And this right here is well, basically this is my LFO waveform, and I'm gonna use one of these 4 shapes to draw a waveform. So for instance, I can use a falling waveform and do something like this. I can just click and drag. I can do negative or positive and just change my waveform. Okay. I can use shift and drag to create a longer segment. Okay. Let's reset it. I can also use this slider here to control if it's more of an exponential curve, if it's a linear decay, or something more logarithmic. So right now I set it to exponential. So more snappy in the sound. Of course, I can also just right-click and change it for a specific step. Let's control the volume as well with that. So I'm gonna right-click, choose my VCA. Oh, wrong column. You know, so you have a little bit. You can hear the movement a little bit more. Let's go back to Shaper, and yeah, I'm going to show you some of the features. So as you can see, it can be used to do more like trance-gatey kind of sound. If you want to do something like really down, understand? Tag, 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 So this, you know, how efficiently you can draw waveforms, it you know, really opens a whole dimension of creating patches, stabby patches, evolving sounds. Let's control some other things. Let's all right, so now let's listen. Let's see other ways to use the shaper. So, for instance, I could use the join function. What it does is it just joins the different positions together, so you can draw continuous waveforms. So let's have a look. Yeah, it's an example. I can make it very steppy, for instance. Okay. Here's another way to use it. So you can have falling, rising, joined, or triangle waveforms. So let's use a little bit of all of that together. Let's do something like down, down, use the rising fall, down, 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 something like down, down. And let's do another one like this. And use the triangle waveform like this, and finish with a rising curve like this, a longer one. Close it. So yeah, you know, you can do lots of different shapes. Let's just one last thing I wanted to show, maybe something like a strummy guitar. So something like that. So with a long segment like this. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just play the LFO one shot and make it much faster. Assign this back to the PA. So, yeah. It's just, you know, it's just different ways of using this function. The amazing thing is how, you know, it's very flexible to, you know, to try more experimental modulations, you know, step-based, like one-shot envelopes where you give it, you know, exactly the kind of shape that you want, some weird LFO waveforms. All of that is possible. Let's move on. Let's load a patch. Let's load a patch and have a look at the sequencer. Tuck, tuck, tuck. Maybe this. It's interesting. Yeah, so sequencer, so either off, playing notes, arpeggiator, arpeggiator, so with different modes, up, down, random. You can change the octaves. Some of the interesting features like repeat, where it's going to take each note and play twice when I click it. Nice performance control. You can do ratchet, so it's going to play the note twice. Add some randomization of the octave. And mutate, which takes the notes that you play, and it changes some of these notes using octaves or fifths or something that's staying in the scale, but it mutates it, and when you want to go back to your original pattern, you just play it back. So let's get rid of random octave. So mutate. So essentially, let's do something where I'm going to use the mode order. So it's going to play back the note in the order that I played them. And let's write a longer arpeggio. I click the hold button so I can enter notes one after the other. So okay. Now I'm going to mutate the sequence. Okay. Okay. Let's try the spice and dice function. So let's do something a bit sharper, like this. And we're gonna try the spice function, which is another functionality of the sequencer, which adds randomness to the velocity, amount of the envelope, decays, cutoff, multiple parameters. So as you can hear, it's going to take some of the notes. It takes some of the notes and makes them shorter. Some other notes are going to become longer. This is just a regular sequence with some spice. And dice lets you just reshuffle this kind of random movement. So here I have some spice. I click on dice. I have something new. And every time I'm going to click on dice, I'm going to get a new randomized Bring back the bass. And I'm back to my original sequence. So yeah, I don't know. I hope it shows how quickly you can jam with melody and just figure out new kind of maybe unexpected sequences through the different functions that the Arpeggiator provides. Sequencer. Let's load back this patch fondant. And let's set it to 2 bars and record a sequence. Okay, I messed it up, so I can just move the notes. So it's a piano roll, and you get access to just every note. You can move them, you can reduce the length, you can change the velocity. Well, you can move the notes, you can change the velocity over here. Yeah. So now this note of my bass doesn't work well because it's a software instrument. I can just go back to it and just change some notes. One of the features of the sequencer is that you can write modulations of the. So you have 4 tracks of parameter modulations. So, for instance, let's do a modulation on the cutoff. So I click on one of these. These are the 4 slots. I can see them in big size, for instance. Click here. It shows me the synth page. I can choose one of the parameters that I want to edit. Let's say cutoff, and I'm back to here, and it controls my cutoff. Let's reduce the cutoff a bit. Okay, and now I can draw my modulation. Choose another one. Maybe this one was just tweaking. Oscillator shape, which makes the sound a bit more aggressive. So first it's low, and then you can create. Right. Not the most beautiful, but you get the idea. You have 4 tracks of automation that you can control and write a sequence. The sequence can be up to 64 steps. So right now we're only using 32, and you can click on these buttons to change the sequence length. The spice and dice functionalities that I showed you before also work on the sequencer. It's not only for the Arpeggiator. Yeah, let's I don't know. Let's listen to a few more patches before we conclude and go to the questions. So this patch, it's interesting. It's kind of like a super saw that is in control. And Mathieu, one of the friends of Murray here, designed this one. Again, like distortion shows up at some point. And if you don't want it to be distorted, same thing, just, you know, the macros, you know, weird, unexpected sound. This as a you know, as a feel in a track. It's so nice. Play the room. Maybe a bit more focused on the effect, you know, kind of this weird roomy sound. Yeah, you know, this kind of patches, you know, something that's in between cinematic sound effects, you know, that you may want to play, not even like in an actual tonality, but then it can transform into more of a pad, more of a key sound. You know, you always have some of the macro controls who turn into more of a weird noisy sound. It's really flexible. It's just simpler tone, you know, more of a sharp, plucky sound from Victor, another friend of mine who designed presets. Let's see what it does. So a little bit of reverb. Sorry. Let's move the delay to insert. And let's finish with this one. This is a patch that I made for the factory library. And it uses the noise oscillator is one of the engines which combines some waveform with noise. In this case, a sine wave with some noise. So you can see on the oscilloscope here, this is the actual sound of the engine. So this is the sound of the noise. The second engine in this case is used as to transform the sound of the first one. You can either use it as a second oscillator, or you can use it as a digital filter to control the sound of oscillator 1. And in this case, I'm using it as a resonant filter. So the resonance is fully cranked up, and the cutoff is tuned so that it plays in tune, but it's slightly detuned compared to the oscillator. And same thing with the filter. The filter also has high resonance, and it's tuned. So if I take down the resonance of the two filters, we have a simple triangle-ish sound. This is the first resonance. And the second one. And this is how it plays with the sequence. Okay. Oh, yes. Okay. I wasn't taking the right track. Let's go back. Yeah, I hope this gives a brief overview of the capabilities of MiniFreak V. I hope you like the sound that you heard. Personally, I'm really fond of the factory library and the sounds that can be made with MiniFreak V. And if I want to insist on some things, having multiple oscillator types here, just selecting a sound, trying different types, see how the sound changes. Maybe let's go back to maybe this bass sound. Okay. So here the sounds are really modulated, but it's an experiment. Let's see how it sounds when we move to different engine. This is something I particularly like with MiniFreak, just how quickly you just find different colors, different versions of your sound, because hey, here's something I like. Let's see how it sounds when I just move it to completely change the timbre, like. Yeah, there it is. There's an overview of MiniFreak. Yeah, so trying different oscillator modes. This is something I strongly recommend. Messing with the effect, messing with modulations of the effects. Just trying. Let me get rid. There we go. Yeah, just how quickly you can assign modulations and have something that just changes drastically with the mod matrix, and how quickly you just select a destination and modulate it. There's a promotion these days of MiniFreak V, so it's a good opportunity to try it out, test the demo, maybe purchase it. MiniFreak is also still for sale, of course, definitely, and it's a wonderful instrument. And like I said, having the two together, having this such tight integration, working in a DAW with multiple tracks, and this becomes perfectly integrated, bi-directional control of a digital synth, and maybe MiniFreak V will become your go-to software synth because of how efficiently you can just tweak it with the hardware and create patches on the hardware. Just immediately get them in the software. The browser is linked, so these are my MiniFreak patches, the ones that I created on the machine. I have them here immediately. The flexibility of working with the two together might make it your next favorite hardware and software synth. Okay, so let's see if there's a few questions. Oh, I see there's a lot of questions. So let's start with the first one. How does MiniFreak V differ from Pigments 4? They seem similar. Very interesting question. Very interesting question because both instruments just try to, they're more, a word that we like to use these days is like chemical sounds, that something that's more on the edgy, digital kind of sound, and both try to do that. I would say that in using it, the free oscillator and how quickly you can just go through many forms of synthesis makes it very different from Pigments. Let me find a way so that I can see the questions and still show some things. Hold on. Sorry about that. There we go. Yeah. So yeah, this to me is the main thing. It's in terms of functionality, Pigments has a lot more capabilities. Pigments has 3 LFOs, 3 envelopes, random modulators, a flexible sequencer as well, 3 engines, 2 filters. There's a lot you can do with Pigments. What I like with MiniFreak V is that even with a more limited feature set, you can get such a breadth of tones, And this is something I like, when I want to just mess around and create some patches and, just go through different forms of synthesis and see what happens, I use MiniFreak V. When I want to have something where I'm not going to be limited in any way by, what my synthesizer can do, I turn to Pigments. So Kev Davies asks, any tips for getting the most from speech? So speech is a mode of oscillator. Let's listen to it. Speech is one of the modes from mutable instrument flats, and it's I don't want to say anything wrong, but it uses different forms of text-to-speech algorithms that were designed in the 70s and 80s, which creates these very robotic voices. So this is a default patch. Let's see a bit what we can do. We have the type control. Which either lets you kind of get all the different formant and timbres, or and then you have a mode where with different modes. On the second half, you have modes. You have actual words that you can hear.
Indigo, blue, yellow, orange, 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 orange.
So yeah, it
Orange.
Just as a way to
Orange.
to add something to your patch. So, you know, it can be a bit gimmicky.
Orange.
Maybe you're not gonna make patches with this all the time. Let's see how it sounds.
Orange. 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 Orange.
You know, so let's add some.
Orange. 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 Orange.
Yeah, this is one way you can use it. Let's try something. It might not work. Let's see how it works. I'm gonna use FM RM. So what it does is it takes the first oscillator, so in this case our speech oscillator, and uses it as an FM source. So by default we have just a simple tone, sine wave, and when I increase frec mod, it's gonna do FM with the speech. So yeah, maybe. Maybe one way to use it is to create like robotic, messed up dubstep basses. From Vesper, this plugin seems very CPU intensive. Do you guys always freeze strike after? So yeah, because there's analog emulation and because of you know, just the fact that we had to run some code that was meant for hardware on some software, it's a bit on the heavy side in terms of CPU. It's something that we're working on, and hopefully we're going to get a new version that has better CPU performances. It's very usable. It's not critical in any way, but it still uses quite a bit of CPU compared to some of our V collection instruments, for instance. It's something we're working on. Yeah. And no, personally, I don't freeze tracks. I can use multiple instances because, you know, in a DAW, when you're going to have multi-core, each of the core is going to get different instances. So you can still use multiple instances in parallel and be fine. So from Nick D, let me read that. In MiniFreak V, you can right-click a macro slot and select from a large list of options. But I can see how to do the same in MiniFreak hardware. For instance, using macros to control mod matrix amounts. Is this possible? So, if we can move to the hardware, to assign a macro on the hardware, let's go back to, let's still use dispatch, but a cleaner version. Okay, we're gonna modulate that. So on the software, if I want to assign a macro, I just click here, click a patch, and now I can set amount. And now my macro, hardware, software, or hardware is going to control this one. Okay. I can also do a right click and select one of the destinations here. For instance, the VCA. And also the modulation destinations, indeed. So in this case, I'm modulating the envelope on the timbre. But it's an interesting thing. I'm not even sure it's possible in the hardware. I need to check. So I don't think it's possible on the hardware, and it's funny that it's possible on the software. But the main reason why it's not possible on the hardware is because I'm trying to find a way to display the destinations in a way that's readable. For instance, if I want to control the amount of cycling envelope on the cutoff, I need to show on this small screen cycling envelope to cutoff, and it's quite difficult. So strangely, it works on the software, and well, basically just expect it in an update, because there's no reason it shouldn't work on the hardware if it's possible on the software. But yeah, it's nice. I discover features in my product from questions of the live stream. From Francesco, when will the missing oscillators present in the MicroFreak be implemented? So MicroFreak has some oscillators that are not in MiniFreak, and these are the wavetable and user wavetable and the vocoder. MiniFreak has multiple modes that are not in MicroFreak. The reason why we don't have the wavetable engine in MiniFreak, MicroFreak, it works. You have 16 wavetable slots, and this is how it works. On MiniFreak, because we have MiniFreak V, I wanted something where you can just drag and drop a wavetable, a wave file directly in one of the oscillators in the user interface, and I want the wavetable to be sent to the hardware, and that the hardware understands the wavetable, and that you can play with it immediately. I also want the sound of the wavetable engine to be a little bit more high fidelity than it is on MicroFreak. MicroFreak had some CPU and memory constraints that made it a bit more limited in terms of sound. And for this one, I want to have something where it retains more of the sound of the wavetable, so maybe more cycles in the wave, and just in general slightly improved sound. So for all these reasons, I don't want to reuse the MicroFreak engine, and to make a better one, or at least one that better suits what MiniFreak is capable of. Now, I can't really comment on when this is going to be available. And same thing with the vocoder here. So we have an external input. It also works with the software. The external input can let you process another track from your DAW, or on the hardware, another synth, or it works really well on drum loops. And the goal at some point is also to have a vocoder. But the vocoder in MicroFreak, the vocoder is an oscillator type. On MiniFreak, it makes more sense to be an effect, so that you can have the whole synth voice with whatever oscillators you want, and use the external input as the modulator, carrier. I can never remember. Anyway, one of them, and combine the two together as an effect. So it's a different implementation. It's a different logic. It's designing a new engine. So that's why we don't use the one from MicroFreak. And same thing. Hopefully it will happen in the future. I can't tell when. Yeah, same question from Thomas Rickson. Love my MiniFreak and V so much. Is there any possibility of the MiniFreak getting vocoder in the future? Thanks for the kind work. I'm really happy that some of you enjoy your instrument. And same thing. I don't know when, but hopefully it will happen. Yeah. So from Maria Kalfa, will the VST always be free for the owners of the MiniFreak? Because not sure when I can buy it. Yes, the MiniFreak V, the software, will be free for MiniFreak owners. It's part of the MiniFreak experience, and the software is paid for. If you want to buy it standalone. From Secret States, can I bring my MicroFreak presets into MiniFreak V? No, the presets are not compatible. The envelopes are not exactly the same. Some of the oscillator modes are not available, like we just discussed. And there's one or two. Yeah, the cycling envelope also has slight differences. There are multiple reasons why I couldn't get a perfect equivalent of a MicroFreak patch into MiniFreak. So there's no compatibility of the patches, neither between MicroFreak and MiniFreak, or between MicroFreak and MiniFreak V. From Courgette à Roulette, can you tune it to 42 hertz? Well, actually, you can. You can. Can you? I can't remember. Utility, audio, master tune, and you can detune it. You can detune it, so it's a detune by sense, because the important thing was to have it as as a sense detune. But if you know the correspondence between 440 and 432 hertz, you will find a way with sense to get your chakras with a beautiful sound. Sorry, the question is long and I was trying to process it in my head. Let's read it together. Is there any way to use the internal ARP with external MIDI signals from a JW sending the output directly to the MiniFreak? Every time I try it without the software, I just don't use the ARP. Use the internal ARP with external MIDI signals. So is it? I don't know if it's talking about the internal app of MiniFreak V or MiniFreak directly to the MiniFreak. So if you want to have MIDI, if I get it right, you want to have MIDI in your GW and get the notes to control the arpeggiator of MiniFreak. I'm not sure. You know what? Let's try. So let's try. Let's get rid of MiniFreak, all the MiniFreak V instances, and just create a MIDI track. We're gonna send notes to am I stupid? Yes. MiniFreak out track. There we go. Sorry. So MIDI out to MiniFreak MIDI. Okay. Now, okay, so now I have a note going to my do, and if I set the arpeggiator, yeah, this I'm. Let me check for a second. Okay, so. There's a setting in the utility MIDI setting that decides if the keyboard sends just the raw notes of the keyboard and it expects to receive raw notes and then it processes with arpeggiator and sequencer, or if the MIDI that is sent by MiniFreak is already transformed by the arpeggiator sequencer, and the notes that come back, it's just added to the arpeggiator. And the idea is, if you want to record a performance and play it back, you don't want to have the arpeggiator on top of the arpeggiator. So if it outputs the arpeggio, it expects to receive, if you want to play back the melody, it will send back the arpeggio, and you don't want to arpeggiate it a second time. So this is why you have to configure the setting depending on how you use. If you want to send the arpeggiated notes from MiniFreak and receive arpeggiated notes recorded back, or if you want to send raw notes and process it afterwards. So yeah, in this case, I had to change the setting, and now I can do it. From Courgette à Roulette. The filter on the MiniFreak seems to be warmer than the MiniFreak V. Do you know if this will be changed in a future update? I'm certain that this is a question from someone within Arpeggiator, and I'm surprised that my friends didn't filter these questions, but I still read them. So yeah, it's a joke. It's the sound of the filter is really the same in both. And not one is warmer than the other, and nothing will change in an update because it's already perfect. From Timberwolf, will you eventually be able to copy ARPs to sequences on the MiniFreak V as you can do on the MiniFreak? I guess so. I guess so. That's indeed it's not available yet, but let's think about it for an update. The next question is, can I get it to export a wave file for each note so I can use it as a sample on my Nord Wave 2? There are tools that do that. There are tools that just send MIDI to a synth and record the audio back, and then just create a full multi-layered patch using that. This is not something we're going to do directly on MiniFreak. I don't think it, or MiniFreak V. I don't think it's the role of the software to do that. But just look it up. You'll find some tools to do that. From your order risk, hi Sébastien, what do you think about having MiniFreak V and MiniFreak sequencer be synced? So the way it works is, again, it's kind of the same thing where you don't want the notes from the sequencer to be received by the MiniFreak V sequencer. So either we send the sequencer or we just play the sequencer for MiniFreak V. So right now, it's not like if you play on MiniFreak, you get notes on MiniFreak, and you'll still get notes on MiniFreak V, because one of the main workflow is that the notes from MiniFreak are sent to MiniFreak V, so you can just jam and tune and turn the knob at the same time. So for these reasons, the playback of the sequencer in MiniFreak V is handled by just pressing keys, and it triggers a sequencer, or setting this. Let me show you. There's an auto mode here, where so by default the sequencer doesn't play. If I press a note, it's gonna play the sequence here, and you see the play stop button. Just lights up, and I can also set autoplay. And now, if I play my DAW, it's gonna automatically play. So it depends on the workflow. Either you want to play from keys, which I would recommend. I find it so much more flexible when using sequencers in software that you just trigger them from a key so that you can write your power, interrupt it at some point. But if you prefer to have it like your DAW plays, the MiniFreak plays, then MiniFreak V plays, then you can do that. And if the two are synced together, MiniFreak V should play. And it's not playing because not receiving sync. No, right. And now it's playing. There we go. Anyway, to save up to sequences on MiniFreak V, it's already replied. Right now, it's not possible. I hear that the synth generate noise and some kind of current. Is that for every type of synthesis? I like it. So MiniFreak has a noise floor generated by the all the analog part of the sound, mostly the input of the effect. When you do a simple patch, you don't hear the noise. The thing is, we chose to have very high dynamic effect. The multi-band compressor can really lift up all the low signals, including the noise, and the distortion can have 48 dB of gain, which will just bring everything up and distort it. So for these reasons, you can hear the noise. And in many patches, it's actually part of the timbre. It gives it a bit of a lo-fi-ness. You don't need to use 60 dB of gain on distortion, and you don't need to lift up 36 dB of upward compression in all patches. But sometimes it makes sense, and it reveals these artifacts. It can also reveal some of the aliasing in some of the oscillators and these digital artifacts. But the great thing is that you can use it, creatively. And the remark is, is that for every type of synthesis because the person likes it? It's part of the sound engine, and we emulated that as well because it's part of the sound of MiniFreak. So when we made MiniFreak V, we also emulated the noise so that it's part of the patch. And if you also use these very high dynamic effects on MiniFreak V, you will get this this noise that lifts up. maybe there's going to be a setting afterwards to take it off, but right now, because we want to just get a one-to-one equivalent of MiniFreak and MiniFreak V, the noise is in both. Are the controls natively mapped so that if you move a knob on the hardware, it will change on the software? Thanks. Yes, it is, and we use a proprietary protocol via USB, so that if you sync MiniFreak to MiniFreak V, everything is pre-mapped. The values of the knobs reflect the control. You can change the value from the software, and it will be shown on the hardware. And everything is one-to-one directional, and you don't need to do anything. So, if I deactivate the effects, if I record some notes in this hardware sequencer, there are going to be in the software. So everything is perfectly in sync when you use the two together. If you use a MIDI controller, let's say you have a MiniLab or something, you're going to have a default controller mapping, or you can create your own if you want to change the parameters you want to map. And now you're back to, I would say, the default software implementation of Arpeggiator software. But yeah, the hardware having a one-to-one interaction is actually, well, to be honest, it was a big effort in terms of development, and it's also just something that works flawlessly. And you can use MiniFreak with multiple instances of MiniFreak V. I was showing you, moving back and forth between instances and just clicking on sync, so that now I tell MiniFreak, okay, just synchronize to this instance now, and just start playing. So you can have one MiniFreak and multiple instances of MiniFreak V, and jump back and forth and go back and edit one of the patches. Right now, you can't have multiple MiniFreaks and multiple instances of MiniFreak V, I think. Any chance of adding the step sequencer? Yeah, maybe. So the question refers to right now in MiniFreak V, the recording of the sequencer is only a real-time recording, whereas on the hardware, I can press record and just record the notes one after the other. And record the notes one after the other in a step fashion. And this is not possible on the software. On the software, on the other hand, you can just write notes with the piano roll and just draw the notes yourself. A word on NKS compatibility on Mac M1. To be honest, I don't know. I can't tell. Ultimately, it will be compatible, but I can't remember. I think we are NKS ready. But I'm sorry, I don't have the answer to this question. If someone in the chat can reply, someone from Arpeggiator has the answer, please do, because I unfortunately I don't know. And this was not the last question. The volume is low on the plugin version. Anyone noticed this? Can this be fixed? So the volume is low on a default patch. The volume can actually be quite high. Let's like this first patch. If I just load, hold on, tuck this one and play some notes. I'm hitting at -3. I'm hitting at -3 on the first patch. So the problem is not that the synth is low. The problem is that it has a lot of dynamics, because 6 voices, 2 oscillators. The oscillators, in themselves have quite a lot of dynamic. 3 effects. The effects, like you can boost EQs and increase the whole volume. And so the idea was to keep the volume reasonably around, -16 dB, so that you have a little bit of headroom to increase. It's more annoying to have something that just goes way too high when you start loading patches than something that starts low. So the factory patch, the default patch, which has the sustain at halfway, is quite soft, but just increasing the sustain and playing 6 notes on just one oscillator. I'm hitting -9. If I add another oscillator, -7. Maybe add some resonance and then the effects, and just summing everything together, you can get a higher volume. And if you want to fix this, just add digital gain afterwards. It's not. It's what we would do if we fix it would be just to add a digital scaling at the end, which is perfectly doable in a DAW if you need extra volume. So it's a lot of questions still. Can you record the MIDI output of the software MiniFreak V into Ableton channel? Drag and drop would be nice too. Some cool MIDI tricks. So I presume that this refers to the sequencer, the output of the sequencer. Right now, no. You can record automations in a DAW. I didn't show you, but if I do a recording, if I do a recording here, if I do a recording and then display the automations, it's going to show as a VST automation, and just it draws a perfectly beautiful automation of my parameter that has the actual name of the parameter. It's a VST parameter, so you don't need to memorize like CC mapping and stuff like that. You immediately get you record with the hardware, but it's recorded as a VST automation. So you can, if you play notes from the hardware and turn some knobs, you can get that recorded. But the software in itself doesn't output notes in the MIDI notes. And honestly, I don't know if it's doable. I would have to check with my friends in development, but I don't know. Will it be possible for those who have the hardware to disable the MiniFreak V sound engine to save CPU and use it as a controller to recall patch? I guess so. It's true, it makes sense. So let me rephrase. Some people have MiniFreak and they want to use MiniFreak V as a way to just do like the patch recall. You load up a DAW session and you have all your presets already preloaded within the DAW, and you use MiniFreak hardware, and you use the sound of the hardware, maybe process it through external effect or whatever. But you use the DAW as a way to browse patches, recall patches from a session, and visualize the patches. But these people don't need the sound from MiniFreak V, and it's a perfectly valid workflow. But right now, MiniFreak V always produces sound. And if you remove it, some of the features will change. Like we need to see how it impacts the sequencer, because some of the things are part of the audio engine to get the sync and everything. We need to check how the visualizer that you have in MiniFreak V, these ones right here, these are oscilloscopes of the actual engine. If we don't process the sound, you won't have these. There are some, and same with the actual position of the LFOs. It's not immediate, and it's something that we can probably do, but right now it's not doable. Will the MiniFreak hardware be able to control analog lab in the future? This would be great. Instabuy. MiniFreak sends MIDI CCs. There's no implementation like we do with our other MIDI controllers. It's not planned. I honestly don't know if this is something that we are going to do, but you can use a generic MIDI controller mapping in Analog Lab, choose the controls you want to assign to the controls that are available in Analog Lab, and do your own mapping, and this will work. So the question is, sorry, I need to read it first. Velocity and aftertouch is a shared source in the matrix. What if I like to have vibrato and aftertouch and only velocity, and velocity only to VCA and filter? Is it possible? So indeed, because the modulation matrix has a limited number of lines, we chose to have velocity and aftertouch combined. So you can choose either velocity alone, or aftertouch alone, or velocity plus aftertouch. Let's do a new patch. So right now, let's control the filter. If I set velocity to cutoff, I'm going to have velocity plus aftertouch. If I choose just velocity, aftertouch has no effect, and the other one. So the question is, what if I like to have vibrato and aftertouch only at velocity, only to VCA and filter? So actually, there's a way to do that. In the envelope, you have controls of the velocity to VCA, velocity to the filter, velocity to the envelope itself and whatever it's connected to, and velocity to time. So let's do a simple patch, like something like this. Let's remove this velocity to cutoff, and in this case, we want to have aftertouch. So we want to do aftertouch to vibrato. So let's see, vibrato. So right now, the aftertouch controls the vibrato. Let's make the vibrato a bit faster. Okay, and then what we're gonna do is use these settings like velocity to VCA, velocity to filter, to have a dynamic effect with the velocity without using the matrix. So in a way, it's not possible to have aftertouch on vibrato and then velocity on, say, an LFO rate, because we don't have the two matrix rows with the full flexibility. But because you have these controls on the envelope, you can do the basic velocity to VCA, velocity to filter, and velocity to envelope without having to sacrifice your column. The velocity to time is really nice also. It makes the envelope longer when you play faster, when you play sharper. I always use that rather than do velocity to amount of envelope via the matrix, because I don't know, when you're doing kind of keys patches, it's so dynamic to have the velocity control things on the envelope. And another thing that I like, let's see what I can, like this for instance. Let's control this with my envelope. And because I have velocity on envelope, I can also have like a dynamic effect. Let me get rid of it on the VCA and VCF. Right now, anything the envelope is controls will be scaled by the velocity, because in this case, velocity to envelope, it actually just reduces the amplitude of the envelope and whatever it's connected to. So VCA, filter, and others. There we go. Final question. Would it be possible to have the cycling envelope assigned to the filter as default instead of the amp envelope like it is currently? I guess so. The main reason why that's not the case is on filter, it's really nice to have A, D, S, and R. You know, the cycling envelope shares the decay and release, as you can see here. because there's only 3 knobs, like a Minimoog actually, or other synth. So the reason why I kept the envelope on the filter is because there's an ADSR, and the reason why I kept the envelope on the VCA is because the cycling envelope can loop, and I didn't want this to control the amplitude of the signal, because you don't want the sound that just infinitely plays. It's nice that the envelope always controls the amplitude of the signal. So the default state is that the envelope controls the filter and the VCA, and that this knob here, envelope to envelope amount, is the amount of the actual envelope. Now, technically, we could totally have an option to choose between envelope and cycling envelope, but right now it's not available, and this is why it was designed that way. And this is the end of the questions. Lots of questions, lots of questions related to MiniFreak, so it's nice. Probably many of you have a MiniFreak at home. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoy using MiniFreak V alongside your MiniFreak as well. Yes, I thank you for your attention, to those of you who stayed until the end, and I'll see you next time. Take care.